Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Lisa of Create and Cam with Lisa. I'm a certified Zentangle teacher and today I'm going to teach you Well Who, a tangle that was deconstructed by Zentangle Inc. So I'm just going to get straight into it and later I will show you some previous samples of Well Who that I've drawn. So we're just going to come in with ink straight away. I'm not going to add a string for this tangle. And the first step that I'm going to do is to add an orb somewhere in the centre of my tile. It doesn't have to be bang on centre. Somewhat centre will be good enough. And I am going to do some lines radiating from that orb towards, in this particular tile, towards the corners. You can obviously do that on a Zentangle tile as well. You can do these orbs, that these lines that we're drawing as more curved, but today I'm going for a bit of a straighter line, and we're starting this line doing the Zentangle technique of take off and land, which simply means starting on a line that you've already drawn and then creating a new one. You don't so much land on obviously another part of the tangle here, but we start off certainly in the middle here. So once you have created these original 4 lines, we're going to basically half the area here. I'll move this pen out of the way because it keeps rolling around. We're going to half each of these sections here by drawing another line that's inevitably going to be a little bit shorter than our original lines. And do that all the way around so that we have 8 lines that are going to be different lengths. They don't all have to be exactly the same length by any means at all. And then we're going to move from that step to creating some orbs, which will go towards the bottom of each of these. If you imagine these as almost like an open triangular shape, obviously it's not got all 3 sides, but I think you'll see what I mean. Roughly at the bottom of each of these bits. And then if you see where we've got these longer original 4 lines, we're going to join that so that we start at that tip and come in and land on these orbs here. Now you could have this line be like a C shape or a backwards C shape, or you could have a slightly more S-shaped curve, and I'll show you a sample of each of them as we go. Obviously this is more of a C shape and a backwards C shape one, but you can do it whatever way that you would like. So just repeating that in each of the 4 corners. So now that we have the corner areas done, we're going to join those shorter second lines to these orbs that are left. And just do that in all 4 edges all the way around. Just drawn a little bit into that orb, but that does not matter. Okay. So the next step is that we find the corner areas again, and we're going to draw a curve either side of that line, a curve that mirrors itself either side of that line in each of the 4 corners. You could experiment rather with drawing this line as a little bit more curved or a little straighter, just whatever you feel inclined to try. So once we have those lines created, we're going to draw we're going to draw around this orb either side, and it's almost like we're trying to split these sections in half all the way around. So we take off from that orb up here, and then we land on that centre orb here. Now, as you can see, as I'm going around, by no means are my sections ending up the same size. It does not matter. Zentangle is all about the process, not really about the result. So just follow along with these steps, and as long as you're following the steps, you will find that you start to feel that relaxation and you get in the rhythm, and it's just great for your focus, and it's very, very mindful. So I'm going to put, I should have said at the start, this is an 05 uni pin. So I'm going to put that aside now, and I'm picking up my Lumos pen. So this nib in this pen is a lot finer. Don't know if this will focus. Now that I've tried to focus, I want to actually get it to focus. It's trying. Come on. There we go. Right, that was a bit of a... just bear with me, that was a bit of a bad focus. I'll maybe not try and do that in future videos, but I just wanted you to see that it is quite a bit of a thinner nib than the previous one that we had. So what I'm going to do now, in these bits at the tops of each of these corner edges, I am just going to create an aura. So I'm mimicking the shape that went before that, and just recreating that all the way along the length of this tip. And obviously you can start in whatever corner that you would like. We're going to do exactly the same thing in each of these corners. I've been having a lot of fun with this tangle. I was just having a look at previous tangles that I've created myself and that I've seen online, and trying to decide what one to do for my next video. And so I've kind of been playing around with this the last couple of days, and it's very, very versatile. So the way that I'm showing you just now, up to now, is exactly the same as Zentangle HQ would do theirs. But then I'm going to go away off slightly differently from the way that they did theirs in a minute. Because essentially, once you've got the shape down, we've already got the basic well who shape, and then you can put whatever fillers that you would like to put in each of these sections. So you might end up doing something completely different from me. And I've done this tangle in a few different colourways. So I've done it, like my brand colours and also my favourite colours are purple and teal. So I've done one in those colours, and as you'll see later on, I used in these outside bits, in these middle bits, sorry, I used the pattern Jonquil, which is one of my favourites. And I've used red, and I tend to like putting the gold pen that I have into the orbs. I did it with purple, and I think purple and gold work very well together. So in the Zentangle HQ version of Well Well Who, they have a little, like, it's sort of, if you're familiar with the Crescent Moon Tangle, it starts off basically the same as that, with the little semicircle that's inked in, and then Zentangle HQ aura, that shape all the way down here. But what I'm going to do today is I'm just actually going to split these with some vertical lines, although they're slightly curved, obviously. Just for a slight change in the look. And depending on how you have your tile, you might find that your Tangle has created more or less space for adding extra lines. Don't feel like you have to have the same amount of, or the same number of lines in each different bit. If you can only fit in 3 in one and you've got 4 in another, it's totally cool. Nobody's going to come along and count them. So I think, what am I going to do in these areas? I think today I'm going to add a couple of auras, one line either side of each of these triangular shapes. And then, just because I've not done this yet, oops, I went a bit close to that line there. I am going to draw some orbs that get bigger as they come out towards the edge of the tile. And as you get out to the edges, they might become more of an oval orb rather than a circular one. That's totally cool. Just work with the space that you have. But as with most tiles, you can play around with different ways of doing things. Because sometimes people say to me, they don't really know how to explore different things for themselves, different tangles for themselves, because they say they don't know what tangles complement one another. And the answer to that is you can actually put most tangles together, to be honest. I think the only thing I would say is to, in my personal opinion, to not have too many tangles on the one tile, because then at that point everything starts to look a bit busy and chaotic. But what I was going to say is that you just can apply this concept of what if. Often you see Barbara Langston talking about that on her channel. So, you could say, well, somebody has done such and such a shape in this area. What if I tried that with a different shape? Or what if I used a different thickness of pen? Or what if I used a different colour? So just question how you could do something slightly different. It doesn't have to be drastic, but just slightly different. And you will find that you have lots of inspiration for different things that you can try out. And you've also got the Zentangle other method of deciding what tiles to do, where they use what's known as a legend. if you're into Zentangle already, you'll know what a legend actually is. But for those of you who don't know what a legend is a list of tiles. Zentangle have a legend that they included in one of their earlier Zentangle kits. But you can create your own legend. If you've got a list of tiles that you particularly enjoy doing, make them your legend. Have them be your list of tangles. And then the idea behind doing the legend is that you assign each tangle a number. I'm just going to see if I've got... I do. I've got it here. Zentangle have a tangle. Helps if you can get the right word, Lisa. I can't off the top of my head remember what this name of this die is, but you can see here it's got 20 sides. So you would roll this, and then whatever number you roll, you draw the tangle that you've assigned to that number. And that's a really, really good way of taking out any decision making, because sometimes people just, that kind of puts them off. They get too in their heads. So I quite like that. I haven't actually routinely chosen my tangles in that way. Not for a long, long time, but I recently participated in the Zenuary project, and there was a Zoom class at the end of that project, a live one, and I can't remember the name of the person who was bringing all the project together, I'm afraid, but I'll put it in the description. So anyway, she had suggested at the start that we all just draw a random string. There was nothing universal, for want of a better word. There was nothing that was the same that everybody started with. And then she was just telling us, okay, the next tile we're going to draw is whatever that tangle would have been. And we all just worked with that tangle and fit it in somewhere that we had on our tile in whatever spaces we had. So sometimes you'll find in a situation like that people run out of spaces depending on what they've got in their string. Some people run out of spaces more quickly. But it was just a really enjoyable way of doing things. I really enjoyed that class. There we go. So I'm now going straight to graphite. And initially I'm just going to add a line of graphite just either side of each of these. They sort of look like orchid leaves or something to me now. But just to put a layer of graphite there, just anywhere that I have a tangle and it overlaps another tangle, I just like to add the graphite just to kind of separate them a little bit and differentiate them from one another. So I'm doing that on both sides of that. And then I'm going to put some graphite also in these sections here. And then I am going to add like a grin shape in the bottom right hand area of each of these orbs. And you could have this so that you have the orb, like you don't turn your tile and you have the smiley face on the same bit, or you could turn it and add, and I'm just, as you can see, I'm doing each of these individual sections and then I'm turning my tile. Just works out a slightly different way that you shade them. I also am going to add a little bit of graphite up the centres here, just to make this look a bit more dimensional. And not forgetting the edges. This is just going to make it look so much fuller that you can imagine this being something that you can pick up rather than a flat design. And I might come back to the graphite in a minute or two, but I'm just going to smooth out the graphite that I've put down so far. I'm just using my tortillon here to smooth out the graphite that I do have down. I think that looks really nice. So I'm now going to come in with my white charcoal pencil and add just a little bit of highlight just in a few select areas. So you can see initially I'm going in the centres at the top of these. I'm going to call them orchid flowers. That's just my interpretation of the way it looks. You might not think it looks like an orchid, but at the tips of these anyway, it just brings a bit more interest, in my opinion. Oops, I've actually not shaded that one, blended that one out. So yeah, just adds a bit more interest if you've got the contrast between the darker and the lighter areas of the tile. And now that I've got the highlights done there, I'm going to put in the opposite from where I've put the graphite pencil. I'm just going to put a little smudge of white pastel pencil. And this is just so, to me, different from the way that Zentangle ink have it in their original step outs. And that's the beauty of going off and experimenting with different ways that you can do this tangle for yourself. I am going to add a little bit of white in these sections here. I'm not going to bother doing it in the bits next to the leaves there, because I feel like that would have been hidden in the shade, and if I put white there, it might ruin the illusion of the shade that I was going for. So now I'm going to come in with my blending stump and just smooth in those areas where I've got the white pastel. it was inevitable that I was going to end up doing Well Who on a Renaissance tile, because it's my favourite surface to draw on. The greys are quite good to tangle on as well, because they also allow you to add the highlights, but for me, definitely Renaissance or tan tiles. If you don't know what a Renaissance tile is, they definitely have the edge for me. Just about there. So I'm going to come back in with my original pen, and I'm going to retrace just the outside lines. I'm not going to go around every single line that I had created. I'm just going to retrace some of them. Oops. Just because it can add a bit more definition. Because obviously when you go over your tiles with pastel pencil in particular, but also with the graphite, you can find that everything starts to get a bit smudged. This is such a relaxing part of tangling, when you don't have to think about where your next line is going to be, because you're just restating a previous line. I love that. Oops. Just about there now. And obviously when you're doing this at home, you can do it a bit more slowly. And just take your time not to retrace your pen lines in the wrong areas. So I'm just going to go over these, and then that'll be me done with the ink. We can maybe just put a little bit of pen around these outside V shapes as well. So what I'm going to do, this might look a bit radical in comparison with the colours that I've already had. I'm not sure, it might look beautiful. But I've picked up, it's a Unipin, is that the name of the brand? It's one of these Mitsubishi ones. It's a metallic colour anyway. It's a red metallic pen. So I'm simply going in with that pen in each of those individual orbs. I think this is going to look nice. And this is why it doesn't matter so much like the earlier areas of these tangles when I kind of maybe smudged it a little bit. It doesn't really matter because I knew that I was going to add another colour in here. You can put pencil shading in here. You could fill them in solidly with, just if you'd started out in black, for example, you could tangle and then fill these sections with black. Just whatever appeals to you, really. And then I'm going to add my chop, which is, if you don't know, it's just basically your way of signing your tile. Just going to hide that in there. And I'm going to add some graphite, not all the way around the tile, but certainly around the bottom and at the right hand side here. Just to give it a bit more interest than just sitting on the tile as it was. So there we have it. That is Well Who. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I will show you some previous ones that I created now. So you saw this one at the start. So this is almost the way that Zentangle have theirs, except there's not the crescent moon in the centre here. And I chose to do the tips in a different colour, unlike, well, I'll show you the one that I did in a minute that was all the same colour. And then I just left these other 4 centre bits just as blank because I think that can actually look quite effective as well sometimes. I did this one on a grey tile, that's a 3Z tile, and I used blue. So this is the closest one that I have created to what Zentangle Ink originally had for their first, for the step outs. This one, I love this one. This is my brand colours, and as I mentioned earlier, my favourite colours. I just love purple and teal. So I had the original 4 corner edges the exact same way that Zentangle had theirs, except I did jonquil in the middles here. I could, if I'd wanted to, I could have sectioned these 2 bits into 2 more bits so that I had 4 lines to do jonquil in. But I quite like how the jonquil's just over the 2 areas here rather than splitting that into smaller sections. And then I also created it on the other side of this tile. And you can see I created this today exactly as I did the one this morning, or whatever time you're watching it. So I had the vertical lines here. I created these ones like more with the S shape that I referred to rather than doing a backward C or a regular C. I filled it with Muka rather than putting, whatever the original step out was. I think it was just half in these centre bits. I think it was just half was shaded in. And then I put an aura around the outside and coffered that And simply by coffering, I just mean that I joined each of these aura shapes. Anytime there was more of an angular looking bit, I added a line to join it and then shaded that all out. So you can see there's a few different ways and techniques to explore when it comes to creating Well Who. Brilliant Tangle, so diverse. So as usual, I would love to see what you create. If you tangle along with me, tag me in it please with Create and Cam with Lisa, and then I'll be able to see what you've actually come up with. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, please, just because then it means that you don't miss out on any future videos, and all the likes and shares that I can get pushes it out to even more people. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time today to tangle along with me, and I hope you've had fun, and I'll also hopefully see you for a future lesson. Thank you very much. Bye.